Right now on the National Weather Desk, unfolding catastrophe. As the number of dead and missing rise following Hurricane Helene, basic supplies are running short. Our team is on the ground across the region.
I think we were probably in there 6 hours, with the house moving.
Some were saved. We're still searching for some.
Only communication is in town at the courthouse, and that's still spotty.
I don't know if it's ever going to be normal.
We'll also hear from a hurricane hunter who flew into the eye of the storm.
We delayed in the eye wall to figure out what's going on.
A new wildfire is burning in the Utah mountains.
This plume of smoke here can be seen all throughout Camas.
And the pest that could devastate one state's pumpkin crop.
Losing up to 70% of pumpkins.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Janae Bowens. The magnitude of the devastation is staggering. More than 130 people are dead. Hundreds more are still unaccounted for. Many communities are gone, washed away from the massive floodwater. That's the situation people across the South faced this morning, 4 days after Helene struck the region. Nearly 1.5 million homes and businesses remain without power. The situation is dire near Asheville, North Carolina. There's a shortage of basic supplies, including drinking water. Many roads remain impassable, blocking aid from reaching flood victims. That's why government officials and aid groups are delivering supplies by air and even mule, in addition to roads where passable. Communications are another problem, as cell phone service is limited to non-existent. The view from the sky shows the devastation. Bridges washed away, debris piled up, communities surrounded by water. Full recovery will take months, even years. We have team coverage from across the region this morning. We start in Asheville with reporter Justin Berger.
Devastation like this is an all too familiar scene here in western North Carolina. There are dozens of confirmed fatalities across the region. Search and rescue continues in many of the counties, including here in Yancey County, where cell service is spotty at best. But it's here amidst the ruin on what's left of this road where we are finding hope. Shuttling friends and family over crumbling pavement, Jake Funderburg is grateful, even when the world around him looks like this.
What you see here is kind of the best of it, of these washed out spots where there's multiple spots where our road is completely gone.
From the air, each frame is more jarring than the next.
It's been shocking. It's been humbling as a human, honestly.
On the ground, crews continue search and rescue on 197 South outside Burnsville. Individuals, families, and entire communities are separated, not just physically, but digitally.
Only communication is in town at the courthouse, and that's still spotty.
In town, a simple whiteboard with a dry erase marker.
It's been the only way we've known that some people that we were looking for are okay.
Jason Stokes lives in the neighborhood of Pensacola.
Pensacola Road doesn't exist anymore. So effectively, we're cut off.
The Cattail Creek community is nearby. It took Michael Storr 8 hours and multiple UTV rides to get to Burnsville.
There are no more roads. Where the roads were are completely washed out, so it's going up through creeks and mountainsides.
We visited one of our small towns, Black Mountain, on Monday, where Elena Delatorre, the owner of Ole Guacamole, saw what was left of her restaurant.
This is the first time coming to look at all this mess and start cleaning up and making plans for a better future.
You can see what's left of the inside of their restaurant, with mud covering the floor and many people working to get all of their tables and chairs out and save what they can.
It's arrived. I've had it for 18 years.
As a family-run business, she's counting her blessings.
It's all material stuff that we can rebuild.
Delatorre says the water ran higher than they ever thought it would.
You could see the line of the water going through the kitchen door. It's pretty high, and it pushed the door down, and everything is a mess in there. But that's okay. We'll keep going.
Similar story in eastern Tennessee and western Virginia, where the damage is extensive. Stories of survival are painful, and the search for the missing goes on. We go now to Rebecca Pepin near Bristol.
All Sean Albro could do was watch as the water just kept rushing toward her.
All of a sudden, our house is lifting up. and shifting. The walls are cracking and, you know, broke apart over there. And then I look over at my neighbor's house, and there was a crack. And then we're watching, and all of a sudden, they both just collapse on each other.
The water so swift, waiting was the only option.
We were probably in there 6 hours, you know, with the house moving and my 86-year-old mother-in-law and my 2 dogs.
Families of people missing from Unicoi County's impact plastics are now growing impatient. They're now using friends to translate across a language barrier, asking why no one responded to their cries for help.
So I want to know why the help didn't come to rescue the people that were there.
They used everything they had to save life that day. Some were saved. We're still searching for some.
Emergency management officials now say they were able to rescue 4 people from the company, but say their resources were stretched thin across multiple rescues, including at Unicoi County Hospital, where staff say the water was so fast, efforts to drive and then boat patients out failed.
Johnson County was hit hard by Hurricane Helene. Waters rose fast and swept away many structures along with damaging roads. Jeff Wagner, the road superintendent for the county, says the damage is extensive.
We have got major damage, 378 mile of road in Johnson County, and I'm going to say close 300 mile has got damage on it.
Wagner says there are more than 10 families that can't get out of their neighborhoods because of road damage.
You may have seen this crazy video on our social pages. It's from a hurricane hunter flight into the eye of Helene. The man in the middle of your screen called it one of the roughest rides in his career. His name is Daniel Tyson, and he's a NOAA engineer. Meteorologist Emily Gracie spoke with him about this wild ride.
So when we're going through the storm environment, since there is a lot going on, we try to divvy up the responsibilities of the flight station between the 3 of us. So David Keith on controls, and he's focusing on keeping the aircraft straight and level as much as possible, dealing with those side winds. Chris Wood, who's the co-pilot at that point, is backing him up, making sure he's on airspeed, on track, on altitude. My job is to just maintain airspeed at 210 knots. So I'm somewhere in between 200 and 220. So if I'm faster than 220, I pull back on the power levers. I'll announce that to David. David would then pull up the aircraft to nose it up to try to slow us down. If we're too slow and I have max power set and we're still not speeding up, then David will nose down the aircraft to help us increase speed. So we're trying to maintain that 210 at all times.
How many times did you go through that eye wall?
4 passes. The video was the second pass, which was the one where we delayed in the eye wall to figure out what's going on.
Is that normal to delay like that? Tell me what happened there.
Helene had a massive eye. I think it was like 20 plus miles long. So we were able to actually do some circles in there. And it is common for us to circle in the eye itself. And the reason we do that is, 1, to give the crew a break. So we tend to circle up in the eye just to give people that break, go use the restroom, go get some food, snacks.
What was the feeling when you kind of came through the eye wall at that point and turned around and had that smile?
As I said, as a flight engineer, I'm there for all the emergencies. So when something goes wrong, if I start panicking, they start panicking. So I'm usually very level-headed and mindful, but that was just a general reaction that I couldn't control. That was just like, dang.
Do you always wear the engineer hat? Something tells me this is like your signature look.
It is. It's a few of us, but here's the train conductor hat.
Nice.
So I got this hat when I got qualified as a flight engineer in the Navy back in 2013, and I try to wear it every single chance I get. Sometimes I wear a different hat because people ask me to wear it, so I'll wear the hat through the storm and I'll give it to them as a gift. So.
A quick check of the tropics this morning shows Tropical Storm Kirk spinning in the Atlantic and not a threat to land. There is a disturbance off the coast of Africa that we'll be watching over the next week. And in the Caribbean, there's another disturbance, but it now has just a 40% chance of developing into a storm. And coming up on the National Weather Desk, it's been 8 years since a devastating flood in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We'll look back at the lasting impacts. And we'll find out what's threatening pumpkins in Arkansas.
I'm meteorologist Charlie Lopresti with Look the Northeast. We've had an amazing stretch of weather in the Northeast over the last several days, and that trend will continue. It's a little bit cooler, though, today with most communities in the 60s and 70s. And there will be a few more clouds that mix in. Notice a partly sunny sky by afternoon. That's 3 o'clock. All the remnant moisture from Helene, that's all still staying off to our south. There's a moisture-starved front right there. That will move into the area on Wednesday. It's only the chance for a shower in New York midweek.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Some showers will continue for your Tuesday, especially in the first half of the day. As an area of low pressure finally exits, we will still see just some clouds lingering behind. And then this front goes by, we will start to see much nicer weather coming as we get into Thursday and Friday. But still temperatures fairly mild, upper 60s to low 70s. Will be a few degrees warmer for your Wednesday, as we could hit actually closer to the mid 70s across Maryland and Virginia.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. Here's a look at your highs for this afternoon. We're looking mostly at the 80s. Asheville and Raleigh will be our cool spots in the upper 70s. We'll see pretty dense cloud cover across the area. We will see this pretty distinct line of clouds start to push to the south and east and lift once we get through your Tuesday. Showers expected in the Florida Peninsula and also in western portions of North Carolina once we get to the latter half of Tuesday into your overnight Wednesday.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
In Utah, the Yellow Lake fire continues to burn despite recent rainfall. The fire has charred over 1,500 acres and is 0% contained. Kristen McPeak spoke with an official about how the weather is helping the fire continue to spread.
This fire was growing yesterday and we were still in initial attack. There is 0% containment.
Sierra Hellstrom with the U.S. Forest Service says winds caused the Yellow Lake fire to jump Highway 35 last night.
We have fallen logs falling onto the road. We are bringing snowplows up to clear the roads.
Now that highway remains closed.
We are seeing a less windy day today, but we are seeing higher temperatures.
She says fires like this can happen year-round. That's why it's important to practice fire safety.
Any indication what may have started this?
The cause is under investigation. We don't have any at this time.
With less wind, conditions are preferable. No structures besides a YMCA camp sit near the fire.
Fortunately, there's been a lot of logging and fuels mitigation in that area, so we're feeling very confident that we'll be able to protect that area.
And Hellstrom says mitigation will pay off, as well as adding over 100 people to fight the fire today. As for how big it's grown, it's estimated over 1,500 acres.
We're currently working on a more accurate map with accurate acreage on the ground.
Now, last week marked 8 years since a devastating flood in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Meteorologist Garrett Hade looks back on the lasting impact of that historic flood.
Cedar Rapids saw the second highest crest in city history at 21.97 feet. This was only the second time the Cedar River had ever crested over 20 feet here in Cedar Rapids, with the only other time being the flood of 2008 at 31.12 feet. Heavy rains that year prompted evacuations of the downtown area, with the city installing sandbags and barriers to help reduce the flooding impacts. Just 8 years after the flood of 2008, the city was much better prepared for the rising waters this time, largely reducing the overall impact, although areas like the Nubo district and the Czech Village area did see substantial damages. In all, businesses in Cedar Rapids still suffered around $25.7 million in losses, acting as yet another wake-up call to protect the city from severe flooding.
The most interesting lesson I would say the city of Cedar Rapids took was not in flood protection, but that it could happen again. So I really think it was a change of mindset. This is not a once-in-a-lifetime thing. When the two largest floods happened within a decade of each other, the impact of 2016 was huge in getting that mindset shift to get the flood control system built. And here we stand with 35% complete.
Since then, the city has been working on more permanent flood control systems, including the new floodgates, walls, levees, and gated sewer systems to prevent floodwaters entering the system. Overall, the city hopes to have this completed over the next decade or so. With about a third of the project complete, city leaders say it should still help cut down on most of the prep work needed to protect the city in event of another flood. Overall, reducing the chances of seeing those kinds of damages such as what we saw nearly 8 years ago.
Farmers in Arkansas are finding something in their pumpkin patches scarier than ghosts or goblins. Melon worms. They're a seasonal pest that threaten the orange gourds. But this year, they arrived earlier because of Tropical Storm Beryl in July. Andrew Mobley has more.
Timing is what's key, and so this year we found them about a month earlier than normal.
Some crops have already been hit hard this season, losing up to 70% of pumpkins. According to Cato, the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture's expert on crop-destroying pests, it doesn't take long for melonworms to devastate a crop once they arrive. He says he's heard of farmers losing their entire crop to the pests and told us about one farmer's struggle.
Especially 15 years ago where people had damage on every single pumpkin. The farmer in 21 that told me 50%, that was, he had that contract to sell to someone and he couldn't sell those pumpkins.
It's a great cause for concern for pumpkin patch growers who depend on Halloween season profits.
We're open year round, we're always doing something, but this is what sustains the farm for the year, is the pumpkin patch.
However, pumpkin growers often forego using pesticides late in the season for the sake of their visitors, making them particularly vulnerable.
We always stop spraying about a week before we open because we're concerned about residue.
The next 15 to 20 days are the highest risk for melonworms to attack pumpkins.
I would implore to growers to look for a safe insecticide option, which there are, because you have an entire month of needing to protect pumpkins, and there's a lot of melonworms out flying right now.
Columbus, Ohio meteorologist Andrew Buckmichael is great at interacting with viewers. He recently started a new series where he's answering weather questions people send him on Facebook.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Andrew Buckmichael here, back with your weather bucket questions. We have a bunch of questions to get to. We're going to do a lightning round. By the way, you can add your questions. Just go to my Facebook page and add your questions to this post. You can see it right at the top of my Facebook page. But let's do a lightning round. Ready, set, go. All right, here's a handful of them. Let's get to the first one here. First one coming in from Mike asking about heat lightning. What is it? Basically, it's when you've got a thunderstorm off in the distance, but clear skies where you are. So you're able to see the thunderstorm off in the distance, but it should be called distant lightning because that thunder can't travel that entire distance because sound dissipates over a long distance. All right, next question here. We've got one from Jim. Why is it that in the heat of the summer, we haven't had much severe weather like we did in the spring? You need a constant change in temperatures. You need that dramatic shift. We haven't had it. High pressure and heat this summer has kept us pretty quiet as far as severe weather goes in central Ohio. Other parts of the country have been fairly active, but here haven't had a big change in our weather pattern. All right, another question here coming in. Is corn sweat a real thing? This one from Carol. Yes, it is a real thing. What it is evapotranspiration. All of the corn that's out in the fields across the Midwest and Ohio give off a ton of moisture in August and early September. One difference though, this year, the drought in Ohio has really kept the corn a lot drier. So we didn't get it quite as much in Ohio as normal. All right, final question here. Polly asking, what are the odds of a white Christmas? Depends on what part of the country you live. Central Ohio, it only happens about 25% of the time. The farther north you live, a little better chance. The farther south you live, a lower chance. Thanks for all the weather questions. We're going to get more, so make sure to send in your questions. We'll add them to the bucket.
Researchers at Oregon State University were recently able to catch gray whales doing all sorts of acrobatics while feeding. The researchers have used drone video to follow the whales' habits for 7 years now. Allison Guttleber has more.
The largest population of gray whales swims right here along the west coast. During the winters, they spend time closer to Mexico. In the summer, many move to the north to feed near the Arctic. One smaller group feeds right here on the coast of Oregon. Researchers from Oregon State University have been observing these whales with drones for 7 years.
Usually they dive so deep that we lose sight of them from the drone, but these whales are feeding in water
basically as deep as they are long.
The drones allowed researchers to understand their behaviors, and they found 8 different feeding behaviors that change depending on habitat, size, and age.
We found that the young small whales use these forward-moving tactics, so they're basically wiggling forward through the water on their side or on their back, and they jaw snap, essentially like a little Pac-Man moving through the water.
Older whales use a headstand tactic, head down, tail up, like a synchronized swimmer. Another tactic, bubble blasting, which researchers think might be due to buoyancy control.
Our analysis, we found that larger, fatter whales in shallow habitat were more likely to bubble blast.
Researchers say this study will help them protect these whales in the long run.
And as we head to break, we stay in Oregon for a view of the state's Yamhill River and nearby fields.
Well, a very good Tuesday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. The cold front's moved its way across the plains already, so it is a little cooler today than what it was yesterday. A lot of 70s and 60s for highs. Still some rain across the Great Lakes and the Ohio Valley, but that pushes out to the east for tomorrow. And we are all dry on Wednesday with highs in the 70s and even some 80s. And by the time that we get to Thursday, cranking up the temperatures a little bit more.
Good Tuesday morning to you. Meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region, and pretty comfortable in the morning getting out the door with temperatures in the 50s and 60s, although we have a few spots in the 70s. The afternoon, well, it's mostly to partly sunny skies all across the region. Highs 70s, 80s, pocket of some 90s across Texas, and we head into Wednesday's forecast. Not bad in the morning. The afternoon, again, a lot of sunshine. Very quiet weather pattern. The highs in the 80s and 90s across the region.
Good morning. I'm meteorologist Rebecca Stevenson. Here's what's happening across the West. Hot temperatures continuing in California, traveling right up the California coast and now San Francisco into the 90s today. Record heat is stretching all the way over into parts of Utah and Wyoming, but triple-digit heat bringing big concerns about fire weather for parts of the Southwest. High pressure is the key weather maker, keeping things dry, hot, and at times windy for the concerns of critical fire weather. That's the scene from here.
The National Weather Desk.
The National Weather Service is streamlining some of its cold weather alerts, and the new alerts take effect today. Meteorologist Corbin Voges look at some of the changes we can expect.
So here's some of those products that you would have seen issued in the past in the dark blue. These will be consolidated. All of these 9 products are going to be consolidated to 5. So you're no longer going to see a wind chill watch or a wind chill warning issued in the wintertime. For example, here in the high plains, we'd see a lot of those because our wind always blows and the air temperature usually is not as cold as what the wind chill or the apparent temperature was. Other portions of the country, that may not be the case. So while you would see a wind chill watch issued here in Amarillo, you may not see a wind chill watch issued, say, for example, up towards Buffalo. You may see an extreme cold watch issued instead. And so now, upcoming this year, you'll start seeing these 5 products being used instead of these 9 products. So again, this is going to help improve the decision-making services like your school districts to help them kind of make a decision on what they need to do when some of this hazardous weather is making its way through your neck of the woods.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Janae Bowens. Make it a great Tuesday, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.